Brandi Anderson is a business strategist, marketing consultant, and a local elected official who somehow manages to balance boardrooms, ballot measures, and family life without losing her mind most days. As a partner at Push Consulting LLC, she helps businesses craft compelling campaigns and strategic messaging that drives results. Beyond business and public service, Brandi is a firm believer in showing up, whether that's for her community, her clients, or her grown sons and family. Juggling leadership, entrepreneur, fun, and family, she brings a sharp strategic mind, a creative edge, and just the right amount of humor to every challenge. When she's not working, you'll find her supporting local initiatives, diving into discussions about how to make Reno better for families and businesses alike, or enjoying a well-earned cheeseburger. Welcome, Brandi. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's been a long time coming.
It's just such an honor to have someone that is interested in getting to know me and getting to know, what I've been up to in the world. So I'm excited to get started.
What I find is fascinating is that you and I were both born here in Reno, Nevada. And we're at the same age. We went to different schools and we never ran into each other. And considering what year we graduated, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
It really blows my mind, especially since we've been living in such close proximity in the Valley for so many years together as well.
Yeah. And I have to admit, And I have to admit that the first time that I met you, I fell in love with you. And I just couldn't wait to just share you with the world and with my audience. And I just am so grateful for every experience that I have with you. And I've got the privilege of meeting your adult sons, which are just, those are good boys.
Thank you. You know you're going to break me up if you talk too much about myself.
It's in a world where we need leadership right now. It's nice to see younger generation of men stepping up. So as a mom, a boy mom to another boy mom, thank you.
Thank you. That means more than you can ever know.
Well, let's dive in. I want to hear all about your journey as being an entrepreneur. That's something that I'm passionate about. What intrigued you? Did you decide one day that you just weren't a good employee, or how did this whole thing come about?
That's such a good question. I think it's always been a lifelong of when do I want a boss and when don't I want a boss, right? But really, there's a real story behind why we started our business. I have a small marketing firm, a consultancy with my best friend and business partner, and she and I have been working together in marketing in different companies and different advertising agencies over the years. And we found ourselves on the same team at an education company that we were doing incredible work for. And other education companies had noticed they weren't in a competitive space with us. And they convinced our CEO at the time that we were working for that they would like our team to also manage their marketing. And so it's a very rare thing when your marketing department becomes an income generator for your company. So it really changed the game for my business partner, Jen, and I in understanding what we were capable of and understanding how if you're valuable enough, the traditional structures in business, you can find new ways to work and new ways to take charge of your own life if you provide enough value. And so in 2016, my business partner came to me when she saw the bottom line and saw how much net value and income we were bringing to our corporate education company. And she convinced me that if we wanted to be the moms that we wanted to be, our kids were both in high school at the time, just going into high school and in middle school. If we wanted to be where we wanted to be as moms, when we wanted to be there and not have to really ask permission, we just had to do the work to be in the places where we could get our business handled and be the moms and wives we wanted to be. And so we gave ourselves a year timeline. She set off to handle the business structure. I set off to turn all of those clients into agency clients and not corporate clients. And the rest is history.
Out of your entrepreneurial journey, do you have one moment that really stood out where you said something really powerful, understanding what you're capable of? What was that moment like for you?
And it was a series of moments, really, Marcy, because there were 4 different clients that we needed to turn into Push Consulting clients. And we, number one, needed to convince our current employer that was going to be a valuable option for him to pursue. Now, it was tricky. It's truly tricky to go to, say, a CEO that has current control over your schedule, your workflow, the priorities of the work that you're working on, and say, trust me that if you enter a different type of a business partnership with me that provides me more freedom personally and you a better deal on your marketing, you're going to get much more leverage and value out of your marketing by giving me my freedom. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that that was going to be a losing argument. And when it wasn't, it truly showed me that if you have a collaborative mindset and you can solve creative problems and pitch ideas that can be presented in new and innovative ways, the sky is the limit for your ability to affect your business, affect your family, affect your mental health, and the ability to balance as a woman in this world these days, because it's hard to break away from people having control over your schedule. And it's hard to get the person who has control of your schedule to endorse that freedom. And once it happened, I think I started considering completely new paths for myself in life, myself in my personal health, in my business health, in my friendships, in my what was possible with my relationship with my kids, because suddenly I had so much more time on my hands. And time is the most valuable, I'd say, element that we have in our life.
You know, I started my business. I was thinking about it the other day. I started a business 20 years ago, and that was more to subsidize my employment income, because I was a single mom. And so I have a good friend that, that has the traditional family structure and was able to spend more time with her kids. And it's hard for me sometimes to not be like envious, And so I love the fact that you strategized and were able to be present with the decision of just like, how can I look at this from a different perspective? And then to hear how switching your perspective opened up more possibilities in your thinking.
Well, I want to talk about that perspective point that you brought up, because I think it's important to note that I had a choice also to be a stay-at-home mom, and I tried it, and I was terrible at it. And there was a variety of different reasons. It wasn't because I was a terrible mom. I am not great at structuring a day around my own priorities. It needed to be a day around my children's priorities. And when I tried to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom, my kids were so small that I didn't feel like I was doing a good job, but I didn't want to give up on that freedom. I didn't want to give up on that time and the ability to just really spend it with my boys when they were little. And so knowing that I wasn't going to be great at just staying home, and I don't want to diminish, I don't want to use the word just, because that isn't the case. I just have a very, very busy brain that also needs to be working on ideas. And so this provided me the opportunity to be able to do both.
Yeah, I love that, and in a career myself, or that is one brain dominant, I still love some of the journey that I came from and some of the tasks that activate another side of my brain. So I love that you were able to have the self-awareness to be like, this goes really well with this, and it feeds you. And that being able to serve your kids and your husband from that full saucer is so incredible. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your experience and all of the things.
Can I just share one more thing? This is really important, especially for women. I can't stress enough that when my business partner came to me and looked me in the eyes and said, we need to go out on our own and start this business together, she looked at me and gave me the validation that she believed that I could do it. And that moment was terrifying and amazing, because it was this accountability, not only the accountability that I was smarter and more capable than I thought maybe she thought that I was, but also that she also thought that she was, and she thought we could do this together. But together, that's a huge responsibility. When you are, you're bringing someone along on this journey with you. It was wildly terrifying, and I will never stop thanking Jen for pointing out to me that she believed that she could trust me enough to take this risk together. That is a huge endorsement. And I don't know that women do that enough for each other. I think a lot of time we are focused on what we know about ourselves. We are focused on what we are confident and comfortable with in ourselves. And depending on how you relate with other people, depending on how comfortable you are being vulnerable with somebody, sometimes people don't really know what they're good at unless they have it pointed out, because it's just something that they've been doing. It's just something that, it's just part of their day. It's part of the way they communicate. It's part of the way they show up for somebody. But oftentimes they don't actually know that they're good at it. And so when someone is willing to actually be vulnerable enough to tell you and trust you enough that they admire you, they've noticed you, and that they have confidence in you, that opens up a brand new world of perspective from children. I mean, we know this about children, right? We know that if we tell children they're smart, or they're fast, or they can read well, or they're great storytellers, or they're funny, they believe you. And women do too. But we have, at some point, we stopped celebrating each other's unique, amazing qualities, because I think we started wondering why we possibly didn't have them, and thinking that was an imbalance in between us, where really, if you share with somebody that you see it and you value it, they will share with you what they see and value in you too.
And you're talking about conscious leadership through self-leadership.
Yes.
Yeah. Say more about.
And I said it in like 9,000 words, and you said it in a sentence.
Leadership is really important to you. And this morning before we hopped on, I read about you and your webpage with, what you were proposing to bring to Reno, our Reno community, as being a seat holder in the city council. How has your journey as an entrepreneur fueled your desire to help the Reno community?
I think it's a baseline of education. For my business background, especially in Reno, has given me the benefit to work on some very important work and campaigns in this community that a lot of people, they know that they're out there. Maybe it's the Reno Sparks Convention and Visiting Authority and how we talk about Reno and what it's like to visit here in other markets. Or maybe it's business strategies, questions around air service and why we don't have certain abilities to fly, direct to certain markets, and the complicated nature of air service and the complicated nature of water. These are all very important things that either hinder or help us grow in Reno. And a lot of people could benefit from understanding the little pieces of the working parts and how all of it is connected. Water is connected to the RSCVA. The RSCVA is connected to, air service. Air service is connected directly to the types of industries that we have in Reno and the different jobs that people are doing. And so being, I would say, a 20%er, knowing about 20% about all of those things, it puts me in a unique position to be able to stitch the storyline in while constituents are bringing challenges, questions, opportunities, and ideas to the city council. If you have that broad experience that you, A, understand the industry at least enough to discuss it and understand its challenges and opportunities, and B, understand the humans that are leading that industry locally. If you know enough about those two things and you want to show up, you can be a very powerful advocate in this community. The number one thing you need to do, though, is be humble enough to know that in Nevada and in Reno specifically, we don't really care who you are. We care what you want for the community and if we can help. And I think that's really what sets us apart here in Nevada.
As a woman, and my dad was the first non-union contractor in Northern Nevada. So we were raised in a good old boy community. And
we were.
So how was that as a woman coming into the city council meeting and as your campaign and running for your seats and some of those challenges and touchdowns? Because you had several.
Yes, I did. Thank you for pointing that out. Actually, I will say that growing up here and being a woman here, I've never really put a lot of value in belonging in certain groups or belonging in certain, let's say, professional affiliations. I put a lot of focus on being able to be in those groups, to know enough and have enough humility and respect from your peers to be able to be in a room, but not necessarily own the room, be leading the room. And along the way, I have been spending a few decades picking up on learning about the people, understanding what their motivations are, understanding their skills and talents that they can bring to any solution, also understanding the obstacles that they can potentially bring to a solution. And so as it related to my campaign and also some of the experiences at the city council so far, I think it's really important to be disciplined in knowing your audience and being prepared and owning your right to be in the room. So in a good old boy environment like Reno, if you prepare enough to understand why the people in the room are important, that's all you need to know, because then it's not really about whether or not you're supposed to be in the room. It's that you know enough to spark the conversations and ideas to be of value in the room. And that's how you stay there. And that's how you really kind of blast through the good old boy network. You have to do a lot more work and you have to be really intentioned about it. But when you do it that way, it bogs you down a lot less. You second guess yourself a lot less because you've done the preparation and you know what's going to go right and what could potentially go wrong, and you're ready for it.
You have used the word value in two separate instances. What does value mean to you, or being able to provide value?
Being on the team, whatever that means. If you present yourself, if somebody in a room, on a team, on a project, in a community, if they have introduced themselves to their audience, whatever that is it at a cocktail party? Is it at a networking event? Is it in a city council meeting when you're hearing public comment? If they have identified themselves of what their purpose is, how they can help, and what their boundaries are, to give the person like the ability to have the courage to engage their help, because there's also a lot of boundaries there. You might know somebody is of value and that they can connect you to solutions, but you have to have the courage to ask for their help. So I think really the responsibility is in that first presentation that each of us has control of in a room. What do you want them to know about you? Do you want them to know that you're showing up? These are your skills. These are your talents. It's often helpful to introduce to a room also where you can go wrong. It's not a bad thing to let people know that in this area, I have a weakness, so I could really use your help in this area if I start going off track. When people know that you're willing, you're humble, and you're interested, they will help you.
Love that so much. So much.
You need their help to help others. It's just, there's no ability in our community to interrupt the fabric of that connectivity, because all of us can contribute in small and large ways, depending on what part of that, ripple effect you are on solving problems.
You're connecting so many different pieces that I talk about throughout all of the podcast episodes. And I love those. So what kind of events have happened in your life that have given you the understanding of what your strengths are?
Well, there have been a lot of adults in my professional career that have allowed me to get over my skis and to make mistakes. And they've stayed committed to me, and they have been patient enough to see me through and allowed me to know that I was worth the coaching to get me to the next level, and that they trusted that the coaching was going to stick and that I would apply it. And those have been, those opportunities have presented, like, for example, when I lived in the Bay Area and I was working on a semiconductor client in the late 90s, I told a client that she was incorrect. I was a 22-year-old, client coordinator, account coordinator on this account. And what I said was true, but I had no business saying it. It shouldn't have been said the way that it was said. And I could have just potentially annoyed the people in the room. Everybody kind of got over it because she's the young, naive new girl. And then I could have made that mistake multiple times, for 20 years. But when we left the meeting, my CEO at the time got in the car and he was like, listen, your experience, your ideas, your creativity, and your enthusiasm are worth everything that it takes to get you to where you want to go. You can't tell clients they're wrong. You just can't do that. So let's workshop a few different ways that you could have presented that information to this very high level semiconductor executive, where she would have actually heard you, because the words you chose just would have immediately cut off her ability to understand what you were saying. So just people along the way that could have just been frustrated with me, but instead thought I was worth it and articulated that. Those have been the game changers for me all along the way, because it's important to know when you're valued and when you've been given the opportunity to fail or not be perfect.
Hearing that story, I can't help but to hear you in the story. Like as a friend, I see that that's how you communicate and nurture relationships with others. And what a beautiful gift at 20, 20 something.
Yeah. I really appreciate direct communication. I place probably an inordinate amount of value on vulnerability because, trust moves I would say getting goals achieved really is affected by the amount of trust you have in the team that is working on a project. And trust requires vulnerability. If you are willing to be direct and you are willing to be honest with somebody early in the process so that they can get to know you, it builds relationships that are rock solid moving forward. And you can fail more often, move the project farther because you have that inherent trust. It matters.
It does. Do you have any strategies for our audience on how to establish vulnerability or how to work outside themselves to be more vulnerable?
One of the things I think is really important, because you don't want to just start being vulnerable. You want to really do the work to understand the person that you're going to be vulnerable with. Read the room, if you will. It's hard because vulnerability might mean something very specific to me, but it's going to mean something different to your audience. You have to really value getting to know them, getting to know how they like to work, getting to know how they like to be communicated with, getting to know, like, if somebody doesn't like to have their time wasted, you have to build trust with them through your actions, not just your words, right? And so there's not really one size fits all as it relates to direct communication and vulnerability, but there is one size fits all to intentional learning and understanding of the people that you move through life with, whether it's move through your family, move through business, move through friendships. Intentional understanding of the people that you need to work with and that are valuable in that process is critical.
For me as a young manager, where I really struggled was being able to give constructive feedback and be able to receive that feedback from people as well. And that on its own was such a journey. And being able to sit with that, because I always wanted, growing up, I wanted to be perfect and I would let people down if I wasn't perfect. So feedback always felt very conflicted. Any suggestions for a younger version of myself?
I would say that if you can take your feelings out of feedback and really first honor the fact that somebody gave it to you and view it as a gift. Now, if you have a gift that was a surprise, you don't know what's inside, right? But you're assuming it's going to be positive. If you can approach professional feedback in the same way and understand that that feedback is a gift, if you have the assumption of positive intent, when you open that feedback and really sit with it, you can do much more with the good and the, let's say, maybe challenging in that feedback, because you recognize that if the person chose not to give you feedback, that's because they've chosen to disengage and give up on you. Mm-hmm. And so if you can kind of view feedback as an investment, a deposit into your account in that relationship, it can change everything.
And the team dynamics change so much, because then people are willing to offer their experience and their perspectives. And it does make problem solving as a team so much better. Definitely.
And I mean, it can be so rewarding.
On my journey as an entrepreneur, one of my biggest challenges has been marketing. And there are so many schools of thought, I guess, with marketing. And it just feels like, I guess my biggest frustration is feeling like I have to compete with the algorithm. And for me, it feels like a full-time job. And it makes me not want to get on social media and be social and all of the things. So can you help me break down marketing and help me make peace with it?
I think I can. You're right. Algorithms, surfing algorithms, understanding algorithms, changing algorithms. It's designed in a way to keep us imbalanced. It's designed in a way to have marketers spend money that is wasteful. It's designed in an opportunistic way for, businesses that create marketing platforms to be profitable and make money. I think these days, and this is what I have been really advising my clients, there's never been a more important time to generate one-to-one understanding and relationships with your audience. Instead of valuing a large volume of an audience, You want to value an audience you understand, an audience you know that what they need you to serve them with, connect with them directly. Don't assume that they can be bucketed into a blog with, 35 keywords that's going to somehow funnel the right audience into that content that's going to solve a problem or change their lives or give them a new idea. People want to know that their brand knows Marcy Walker. They want to know their brand knows Brandi Anderson. They want to know that Brandi Anderson is important to them and her friends, because she's so cool, she's so interesting, and she's so valuable that she probably has 30 friends that are like her. And I want to, the brand wants to provide value to them too. So personalization moving forward and building that one-to-one connection is going to be everything. And I think we were all promised, and a lot of brands got very, very successful very quickly because they were able to take this broad strategy and bring this huge audience down a funnel into their brand. But the problem is most of that audience was waste. We wasted most of that audience's time. Oh. And we continue. So once that audience realizes we are not really a fit for their brand, we badger them by not cleaning up our remarketing, our email list, those types of things. We continue to negatively affect our brand on accident by not really understanding that they are not really part of our audience. They're really not our customer. So that's really good news for people that know how to build personal relationships in business, because we get to go back to that. The most successful brands are going to go back to truly understanding the human at the other end of the consumer chain.
I think that is a very valuable point. And, circling back to the part of the conversation where we talked about growing up in Reno and the good old boys. Last night I went to an AGC, an Association of General Contractors event. And
I was there.
How did I not see you?
I don't know, but this is what happens in Reno. I was at table 21.
I was at 15.
I'm sure you looked absolutely delightful, as I did.
Same. So my dad presented for Rick Joy last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he was such a delight.
Yeah.
The love and admiration and respect that he had for him. I was like tearing up, and I've never met him. I've nenever met Mr. Joy.
Yeah. I cried. Rick is, because I'll be 50 this year. And so I've known Rick since I've been 10 years old. And he's such a gift. He truly is. But it reminding me what you're sharing reminded me about the one-on-one relationships. Because even though we've been in this good old boy community, right? It's all about building those one-on-one relationships. The reason in my early journey as an entrepreneur, I had to learn all the things about business to help my dad with his business, except for marketing, because all of that was done on handshakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild.
Yeah. And, we have been as an industry for the last 20 years, we stopped looking at our neighbors and we stopped looking at our community because we were like, why do I need these guys? I can go and steal, customers or create customers more globally, and in a way that people made a lot of money, and they blazed a lot of trails in this digital environment that we've all been living in and learning how to thrive in the last 20 years. Ultimately, I think we went too far, and now there's so much porous information. We're missing real information about who really matters. And what really matters is our community. What really matters is that our neighbors have what they need, that our neighbors understand how you can help, how they can help you, and how that translates to a brand is going to be more and more critical moving forward, because we're only going to really be able to thrive in the areas that we can control. And brands have got to take a very localized look moving forward.
I couldn't agree more. Branding itself, I always think of like the Nike swoosh, and hearing what you were sharing just a few minutes ago about marketing, and what I heard you say basically was not being everything to everybody. And that was my big resistance, like as an early entrepreneur. Like I resisted for the longest time establishing what my target market was and establishing my client avatar And now I wish I could have rewound the tapes and went back because I'd be curious about what that success would look like. But I also feel like those hard knock lessons have been super valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the fact that you're willing to even just learn from the hard knocks puts you in a category of entrepreneurs that is different, because a lot of us started businesses in areas that we know exceptionally well, and we have always done things a certain way, and we find comfort and consistency in that. And then we don't grow the way that we should because we didn't really stretch far enough to fail or break. Right. And so I'm just really proud of you for embracing that mindset early, once you realized it.
Thank you. I really firmly believe that the only constant in life is change. And, maybe that's from growing up as a people pleaser, right? Always morphing yourself into that version of what you perceive other people would be. And that's kind of how it feels like with marketing. You hop on social media, you're stuck in this algorithm, you see all these things, and then you start comparing yourself against those. How do you stay sane scrolling through social media?
Yeah, I have definitely stopped being curious about other people's business on social media more in the last couple of years, once I started realizing that the messaging out there these days in most areas, especially for the most seemingly successful businesses, is so general that I kind of don't believe it. Perception is not reality. And what you can watch with different brands, and whether they're small and local, or, say it's another business locally that you're comparing their growth compared to your growth, you also want to compare their ebbs and flows and times where they've had to contract greatly, and understand what tolerance for chaos you want. Because honestly, my business partner and I, we don't want our business to just take off in one specific way that makes us grow so fast that we can't really, really invest in the people that we have on our team, and B, growth for growth's sake. Does that really tailor to what we want in our lives? Does that really tailor to why we started this business, which was powering the life we wanted to live, not steal time away when we weren't working to live the life we wanted to live? And so I think I probably got off track from your original question. So if I have, remind me how to get back on track.
No, you were great, actually.
Okay, I went down a couple winding roads there.
And they're always the perfect winding roads, right? We always find ourselves where we need to be. I'm going to go into one of my biggest challenges, and I hope that you can help me make sense of this. Going back to the digiphrenia and the imbalance of how social media is designed to suck us in, right? Part of my brand is talking about how being on social media is literally unhealthy for you, and that it's changing our attention span, but it feels, and then when I say that out loud and then I think about hopping on social media and posting, then it just feels like I'm an imposter, right? I'm saying one thing and doing something different, and integrity is so important for me.
Well, there's that. I'm glad you said that, integrity, because you're not going on the social media and posting something that you don't think is of value to your audience. So you are not encouraging them to spend invaluable time on your platform if you are sharing content that will enrich their experience. Being mindful of how long it takes to get that value across to your audience is critical in social media, and not expecting them to do your algorithmic work by waiting till the last minute of a video to get the content that they were really looking for. Trust them enough to get the concept early in the video and provide enough value for them to finish the video. That's where we have to start moving if you want your brand to grow in an authentic, consistent, sticky way, where you're not constantly losing your audience. You're gaining as much audience as you're sending out the back door, by trusting them that you've come here for a certain type of experience, idea, feeling, and you're going to get it early when you engage with me. And that way, when people are changing their relationship with social media, your platform is prioritized in the time that they allot for themselves to kind of get in there and check things out.
beautiful strategy. Thank you. If I was curious about working with Push Consulting, what does that journey look like?
Well, it's really fun.
I bet.
And it feels pretty unserious a lot of the time. What you do is you get to meet with Jen and Jen might be one of the most interesting people on the planet. And we just get to know what your goals and objectives are. And we're very honest with you if we are really the partner for you. If we have the ability to take on a project or a campaign or a brand strategy that you need. And we really always want to understand, what does success look like? What does success need to cost? How much does success need to earn you? Because for Jen and I, we don't have a big flashy agency where we have snacks and drinks and we invite you to our boardroom and we're all sitting around strategizing and good old blowing it up, right? We're respecting each other's time. We're understanding our audience. We're understanding what is how much do you need to get out of this marketing? And we really understand, can we truly provide you that value, or should we find you a different resource? And so it's an a la carte way to solve problems. And if you want to work with a team that is as excited about your success as you are, then we'd be somebody you'd want to consider.
Something important that you said was success needs to earn you. I think as an entrepreneur that has bootstrapped, right? Every single dollar needs to tie to the bottom line for me, and with marketing, that return on investment is so important. So how do you translate likes to bottom line? That seems to be the biggest challenge, right?
Well, yeah. So when you sit down for a marketing plan, the number one thing to understand is, what is the end action that is going to drive your business? If we put this message out, say it's this blog or it's this video that's either digital or on TV or wherever it is, what does success look like? A plus B equals C. And once we understand what that successful action or outcome is, say let's just say it's $1,000 you have to spend. That is very, very important, $1,000. And you need 10 of these actions to be completed successfully. What Jen and I do is we back into how we find your audience. We find the medium in which you can afford that can give you the frequency and the direct ability to confirm that your message was received, understand how long that person was engaged with your message, which is really an indication as to whether or not what you said resonated with them, whether or not whatever problem, service, experience the audience is looking for, did your marketing get them to that place where they spent time with you early? And then ultimately, if that action gets taken, we can boil what happened with that $1,000 of marketing. We can boil it down to 10 different measurable actions so that the next time you have $1,000 to invest, we can get 15 of those done. We'll learn along the way in those 10 points that we were measuring what could have been optimized. Was it a certain word? So say, was responsible a better word than, say, energy efficient for a keyword term? Energy efficient turns off a big audience. Responsible says the same thing, but doesn't turn off an audience. We can learn those data points along the way, refine them, and that same $1,000 next time gets you 15 successful actions. And we are big nerds, and we love small campaigns like this, and we love big campaigns like this because they're all measured the same. You just have to take the time to understand what real success looks like.
I love that you're data-driven, because that's what you're doing, right? You're collecting the data, and then you're being able to make sense of it and then give that back to your client for them to understand. And that's so incredibly powerful.
That is where efficiency lies. If you have the data and you understand what the data can tell you, that is the best way to make any marketing plan efficient, because that's where you find, in a digital world, there's so much waste in the pennies, in the clicks. So if you can scrape the waste out by understanding the data points, you can really do a lot with a very efficient marketing budget these days.
Well, and the efficiency and the data-driven decisions, right? It not only affects the marketing plan, but the business plan as a whole. Knowing your numbers is such a valuable and like imperative thing as being an entrepreneur. You and I could geek out on numbers because I love those too. It feeds part of that brain that I just love.
It also builds confidence. The thing that
Mm.
I know very well is that in the 30 years that I've been in business, we've had multiple economic challenges in this country. And every single time something like that has happened, the marketing budget is always the first to get cut. And oftentimes, and it's because it's not tied to an employee, it's not tied to, upsetting the apple cart in a business. It's oftentimes an easy way to save money. What people don't understand is it's also the easiest way to cut off all of your future business. So having a marketing team that that you're confident that they understand these nuances in data, and they don't have to go in and cut half of a marketing budget out and half of the future results out. If they can understand and respect the data in there, you can make small tweaks, save the money that you need to save, and not interrupt your business flow. But your team has to be confident in you that you are that valuable.
Rewinding a little bit and going back to where I said that I resisted going through the target audience, my biggest lesson was like sitting down and figuring out who that target market was, what my client avatar was, and what journey I wanted them to experience through the business. And it sounds like you and Jen do that in such a thorough way of getting such a clear picture of who you're working with and what they want their person to experience. And then you guys have the data to be able to support that information. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We know who we're not successful with. Also, there is a lot of value in clearly understanding your weaknesses and being willing to own the fact that you aren't great in that space and fail less unnecessarily. That is the other real value in knowing your audience. You waste less of your own time by staying focused on, really where your brand needs to be.
Where your zone of genius is.
And then the mission creep is less because you truly know your audience, which is another way of saying being prepared, right?
So for my audience that doesn't understand or doesn't know what you meant by mission creep, would you elaborate just a smidge on that?
Okay. Yeah. So in a business like Jen and mine, where we're the two principals, mission creep for us would be us knowingly accepting a new business meeting or client in an area where we don't have confidence that we're going to be successful, whether it's confidence with the client that we can deliver in a way that they need and expect. So this is where you don't fake it till you make it when you're a team that's this small, right? You have to own what you can do and stay away from what you can't do. And when you take on clients where you're hoping it's going to go well, but you're really not that qualified, the mission creep is that you're taking away from your clients that are appropriate for you and that you are set up well to meet their goals and meet their expectations. You're disrespecting the clients that you have chosen well by trying to be good at something that you already know you're not. And that will hurt your business more than I think most people understand, because you might be making money over here, but you're losing money and confidence in the clients that you really understand.
It's a beautiful point. Sometimes I get stuck in that paradigm because, there's that, in the past, there was that single mom hustle in me,
Or you think being busy is valuable.
Yeah. And sometimes it's that struggle. There's that old Cherokee proverb about the grandfather that's talking to his son, and he's talking about, the inside of you, there's the white wolf, and then there's the dark wolf. And it just depends on who you feed. There's some days that dark wolf for me really wants to go back to that hustle mindset because my nervous system knows that, right? And if I'm hustling, then I'm busy. And if I'm busy, then I'm productive. And if I'm productive, then I'm worthy. And to being able to uncouple that has been a journey.
Yeah, it is definitely a pattern that we have, gotten ourselves into. Sometimes you don't even know that you've gone down that road again until, a little bit too late. Like maybe you've overpromised something, or you've You've offered, it can be in the little things. Maybe you've offered to connect somebody to a resource that they didn't have before, but you actually can't follow through on it. But you want to, but you can't for a variety of different reasons. What you don't understand is that is mission creep that also sinks into you because your consciousness knows you didn't follow through. Your consciousness knows that you promised somebody something or offered somebody something, but you know that you don't have the bandwidth, the resources, the energy, the time to get it done. And so that drags you down, and you don't really have respect for that until you've, built up 10 or 20 of these little things that become a big thing in your ability to stay out of your own way.
Well, as we wrap up this episode, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? Piece of advice?
The thing that has been coming up in conversations with me and a lot of women that I've been doing life with for at least the last couple of decades recently is that for a long time, whether we are connected professionally or that we've connected personally or it's within a family, for a long time, I think that if we had had the confidence to be vulnerable and honest with a friend and trust that being vulnerable and honest was going to be received in a way where you didn't lose that friendship, the energy saved, the feelings that are hurt, the time that we waste trying to understand things that didn't really exist, if we had just believed in that person enough to be gently honest with them and moved through the power of those relationships moving forward, whether they're in business or they're in family or in your neighborhood, it's indescribable how foundational they become and how foundational that habit of being lovingly vulnerable and direct with the end goal of making the relationship stronger and letting that person know that they are worth it. They are worth the vulnerability that it took to be able to be honest with them about that. And I know that this sounds a little bit innocuous, but it can be applied to a lot of different things in life. And so it starts with each of us, especially as women, realizing that if someone is spending time with you, you're worth it. And they are going to find that you connecting and building a relationship in a more honest and an integral way is an investment in your relationship, a deposit in that account. And it's an honor to be able to work through things and still be present and not lose the relationship. And so I think if us as women, we can start looking towards each other as resources and solutions, there's nothing that we can't handle together.
Agree. You just reframed cancel culture in such a beautiful way and invited us to stand in our own power to have those hard conversations and be vulnerable and pull back that collective competition.
And really realize that a difference in you and me doesn't have to be personal.
Right.
It can exist and it can be acknowledged and respected. It doesn't have to be agreed upon, but it doesn't have to change your relationship. And it's not personal.
No. Well, thank you.
You have to be curious and honor experiences and what people, what matter in their life.
Well, thank you for carving time out of your busy schedule and life to be here today. Really, I appreciate you on so many levels, and I'm just so honored and grateful for any moments I get to spend with you. How can our audience find Push Consulting?
Well, we have a little website at pushconsulting.biz. I will tell you that we're self-advocates. We spend most of our time and energy on our clients and not enough on promoting ourselves. So when you go to that site and you see a picture that may be a decade old, just know we haven't taken new pictures of ourselves yet.
You guys have just been so busy helping clients find their own success measures and levers to pull that success that you just haven't had time to invest in your own website.
That's right. That's the collective experience of most marketing companies.
I can only imagine. Well, thank you for today. And I love and appreciate you. And I hope your day is full of magic.
Well, thank you for finding me interesting enough to have this conversation and share with your audience. It is just such a blessing. And I am grateful for the time to spend with you.
Thank you. I will see you soon.
All right. Take care.
You too.